Lawyers of Reddit, at what point, when working for a defendant, did you realize my client is a monster? I listened to a 911 call where the victim's throat was slit while on the call by our client. I will never forget her gurgling and sounding like she was dying. Somehow she ultimately lived through this, saying, "He killed me, he killed me." I'm on the other side, but I've got a defendant who went to prison for starving 3 adopted children to the point that they needed weeks of hospitalization, then got out of prison and married a guy with children so that she could start starving them, too. Listening to her interview where she attempts to justify what she did to both sets of kids disturbed me more than any of the murder cases I've worked on. When I had to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office to view the evidence in his case, there they were, the hundreds of images of child porn he had traded, the close-up images of his baby's genitals that he had taken and sent around the internet, the pictures of his neighbor's daughters playing in their kiddie pool. Realized he just could not help himself. But he also never once claimed responsibility or showed remorse, so I don't feel too badly for him. I had a client who was accused of domestic violence. Essentially he threw his girlfriend out of a second-story window. Now he's got a terrible history, but so do a lot of my clients, and his attitude is a little entitled, also typical. But he also knows the deal and wants a plea deal. So I'm not really prepared when he absolutely refuses the no jail offer from the state. Keep in mind there were like 5 witnesses. Why? Because they wanted him to pay for her medical bills. Okay, an asshole, but whatever, not the worst. What did it was his counteroffer. I ain't paying that bitch's bills. Tell them I'll pay for the window. Prosecutor was not happy. Criminal defense lawyer. I can name a few instances where I was just absolutely disgusted with my client. Caveat, these are mostly years ago when I was taking just any old case. I most practice white collar and federal now. I won a DUI case because the government messed up on something right before trial was to begin. My client gives me a hug and completely reeks of alcohol. He has driven to court. I took his keys and called his mother. Client who was accused of molesting a 12-year-old. He was mid-40s at the time and I had to shut him down real quick when he tried to tell me how the 12-year-old was coming on to him. I represented a woman for a grand theft charge. Left her in my office to get some things copied before she left. After she left, I realized my sunglasses and car keys were stolen. I tracked her down in the lobby and told her I was not going to represent her anymore and I would call the police if she didn't empty her pockets in front of me and give me my things. I had a client who was released after 25 years in prison for murder, and then the same day he beats up his prospective new landlord. He ended up getting another 10 years. He was unrepentant and laughed about how he hit the guy so hard his eyeball popped out. I thought, this guy deserves to be in prison, took the case to trial anyway and, shocker, lost, and he got 10, the max. Client who pretended to be a doctor so he could sell steroids. According to the Gov, he had numerous clients who were made to believe that his steroids would cure their cancer. They paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars and some of them died. I just thought that was pure evil. I've done a lot of prison legal aid, and I could tell stories about child molesters that would turn you green, but instead I'll turn you green a different way. I had a kid, 17, who was mildly cognitively disabled, due to brain trauma he sustained at the hands of his birth parents, who ended up with a really wonderful foster care family and thrived. He was a popular kid in school, good athlete, got a girlfriend and invited her to meet up and be teenagers one night in a corn silo, which I guess is a thing that country kids do. I don't know, this all comes from the pre-sentence investigation report I read before taking his case, but this girl met him at the silo and they were hanging out inside. By his account, they were having a nice time and he was really enjoying himself. Then for no particular reason, he picked up a 2x4 and bashed her skull in. He then used a combination of very crude farm implements, shovels, hose, to chop her body up and bury it in the corn and went home like nothing had happened. Hey, you asked. ETA, holy shit, I didn't expect to wake up to 11K in karma and 100 replies this morning. I'll try to reply to those I can. And I do appreciate the gesture of giving me Reddit currency, but folks, Reddit has enough money and when the firm needs more, they can go back to their venture capitalists. I would encourage you to make a donation to your local United Way or another reputable charity instead. Oh, I can share a good story. I had a teacher in high school who was a former lawyer. We always asked him why he gave up his practice to start teaching. He finally caved and explained that his last case was the defense of 3 people. Apparently there had been a fourth. It was 2 couples, who in the act of a drunken, drugged-out orgy, decided to kill, partially eat, and dismember one of the women. I guess it seemed like a good idea at the time. As a lawyer, he said it was pretty open and shut, but he had to get his clients the best result possible, and he was exposed to all the horrid details, the pictures, and their reasoning. My teacher had such a far-off look when he explained it that we could see it really got to him. We had a client try and enforce a post-employment restraint against a 19-year-old receptionist after she quit and started working for a competitor. The reason? He wanted to make her life hell because she wouldn't sleep with him, a creepy 57-year-old man. Him trying to sleep with her was the reason she quit. Unsurprisingly, he didn't take our advice to discontinue his claim, and so we ended up sending him elsewhere. The first week I started at my current criminal defense firm, I was tasked with cataloging discovery from our client's phone. The phone had multiple, talking around 4,000, videos, photos, text exchanges with women under 16, though not all of the girls' ages were confirmed. Most, if not all, were under the legal age of consent, and many were barely pubescent, naked and being prostituted over 1 year. He would lure these girls in exchange for drugs. Nothing felt totally bizarre until I came across one video where he was clearly forcing himself upon a literal child who was so high on benzodiazepines, not willingly but rather forced, and choking her in the process. When our firm confronted him, he said he was in love with her and that's why he did it. He would also take these girls to hotels and make them have sex with one another while he taped, but nothing beat what I said above. Pretty horrifying stuff for my first week on the job. I'll go ahead and say it. When I practiced family law and criminal defense, I trusted and believed my criminal defense clients 100x more than my divorce custody clients. The worst monsters are the people who manipulate minor children for custody reasons. Fuck them. Luckily I'm out of that area of law, hopefully for good. Lifelong criminal defense lawyer here. To be completely honest, it's not about the offense but about the person. I've had people accused of murder that I really kind of liked and thought well of. I've had people accused of shoplifting who have given me the heebie-jeebies and seemed like psychopaths. Speaking from purely a criminal standpoint, having a client who is a monster doesn't matter in terms of your duty to them. But it does make the job less pleasant. My worst clients have been people who are comfortable scamming others of their money. My general psychology professor worked for the state of Arkansas assessing criminals to see if they would qualify as criminally insane. He told us a story one time about a guy who would get glass shards and hide them underneath his skin, presumably to use at a more opportune time. He said his interview with the guy made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. She tried to sell her baby. I found out during a hearing, in front of the judge. Had a divorce client, husband and father, who disowned his autistic son, tried to argue that he should get all of his wife's retirement having not worked for 12 years, contacted me during the height of Hurricane Sandy. He was in the Bronx and me in Manhattan, saying he wanted to hold his wife in contempt for not paying him that day while the storm slammed NYC, told me I was making a huge mistake getting married. My wedding date was November 3rd, 4 days after Sandy, saying that I was going to be miserable and regret it. I could go on. But the worst was when, several months later, since his divorce was taking a long time, he sent death threat letters to myself and my wife saying that he had hired an executor to kill the 2 of us if his divorce wasn't finalized in 60 days. Called the police and they said he left his premises 1 day earlier. I heard nothing from him until February 2014 when he emailed me saying he needed a winter coat from his wife and could I help get it for him. Ironically, the divorce didn't have to be completed because he killed himself before the judge signed the judgment of divorce. TLDR, miserable guy who wanted to spread his misery, and crossed the line when he threatened to kill my wife. My mom is one and she told me a story. She was defending a man that was accused of killing his whole family with an axe and burned their bodies. Yeah. He had 3 children, ages 3, 4 and 7 and a wife. My mom said she was afraid to talk to him because he just did not seem normal at all. She said that he was very freaky and that he would just stare at her for no reason for a long time. It still haunts her to this day. He got the death penalty and she was very happy, she didn't even care about the money. I am a lawyer for people on death row. Although some of my clients have been convicted of horrible, sometimes nightmare-inducing, crimes, I honestly have never had the thought, oh, this person is a monster. What I am far more likely to think is, 1. How do I convince my child to never try meth because meth psychosis is fucking real and horrifying, or 2. I am so lucky to have been born into a family where my parents weren't violent, drug-addicted, mentally ill, all of the above, or 3. Jesus Christ, how differently things may have turned out if my client had had access to mental health services on the outside, or 4. Wow, this person who was completely dysfunctional on the outside has adapted really, really well to the structure that an institutional environment provides. Perhaps it's due to my own religious beliefs and to my analytical nature, but the idea that some people are just bad or monsters has never rung true to me, nor has it been borne out by my observed experience. My mom is a lawyer. This is the story about how she quit being a public defender. When you are a public defender, you don't get to choose your cases. She got assigned a young man who, with the help of his girlfriend, had gotten a kitten from a free to a good home ad in the paper. They then brought it home and gave it to their dog as a chew toy. I think they also filmed it. So yeah, she said she needed a shower after every meeting with him. Cancelled her PD contract after the case concluded.